Hey, what's up, folks? Welcome back to On Texas Football, and welcome back to your Wednesday live stream, the Hump Day edition. I'm Lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers, pleased to be joined by the young prodigy, fellow Lifetime Longhorn CJ Vogel, and the newest member of the On Texas Football family, my good friend, esteemed colleague and co-worker, my man Jeff Howe, joining us as well. Yes, we're all distracted watching Texas softball right now, trying to win the championship, trying to win the Natty. So we're all a little distracted. So it'll kind of be an in-game live watch. And yes, CB, we appreciate you because you always have the best countdowns to kick off. 87 days to kick off. My boy Kyle Shanahan wore 87. So we can talk about who's the greatest number 87 in Texas football history, get into that conversation. I got a lot of things that I want to get you guys' thoughts on. We got some quarterback rankings that we'll get into. We'll talk about the Arch Mania, if you will, reaching potentially a fever pitch right before the college football season kicked off. We'll get into that too. The secret sauce for Steve Sarkisian, what some have called the secret sauce for Steve Sarkisian and his success at Texas. We'll dive into that as well. And also, I got a question for you guys to kind of start things off. And I think shout out to you and Jeff. I know you know Bud Elliott. That was an interesting. He actually threw out a question that I think we can relate to. Actually, his question relates right back here to Texas football. But I want to pose that question to the panel and relate it to Texas football specifically. So we'll do that coming up here as well. But of course, you guys drive the show any direction you want to. Super chats jump to the front of the line. You can interrupt the show at any time. Also, you can throw out questions, comments. We'll try to address as many of them as we can. And of course, we'll be watching the ladies here versus Texas Tech try to win a championship. So we'll be a little distracted, just like all of you guys. And if you got some softball questions or comments you want to make, of course, we can talk about that too. All right. Guys, let's dive right into it. I got a question to start all these off. Can you bring up the Bud Elliott tweet there, Matthew, when you get a chance? Because I thought it was a good question he threw out there, and of course, it was related to ended up relating to Texas. His answer to his own question relates to Texas. And yes, CB, we'll get to the Paul Feinbaum thing too. I don't know if that's a curse or not, but Paul Feinbaum really high on Texas. We'll get to his comments as well. But this is the question that Bud threw out there. If you could know the stat line of just one college ball player for this year, who is it and why? His answer, scroll down, was Arch. Just throw it out there after he went, and answered and talked and with all the folks. His answer was Arch Manning. So no surprise there. You guys I'll get your thoughts there if you guys think that's the best answer, first of all, to Bud Elliott's question. But I want to ask you guys, basically flip that question from a Texas perspective. Aside from Arch Manning, let's take him out of it for the Texas question. All right. What other player on the roster, if you could have their stat line for the upcoming season to help you foreshadow, help you better predict how the season is going to go, aside from Arch Manning, who is it?
Oh, this is good.
My initially, my gut told me Trey Wisner.
That's not bad.
And I'm not saying he's got to have a repeat 1,000-yard season, but if things like yards per carry with him are higher, and we just see more consistency out of the run game. I'll break it down, Rod. I'll go kind of football theory, really looking at the macro. Trey Wisner's yards per carry. I think to me that'll tell you a lot about
I like that.
Texas. Because if it's higher, if it's a good number, if it's a number we're all like, all right, yeah, Trey Wisner having a good year, that probably means the offensive line got stuff figured out early. Probably means you're able to run the football when you want to, how you want to.
Oh, that's a good one. I didn't expect that. That's a good one, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that too. I was actually going to go CJ Baxter for my Texas one. I look at this tweet as predicting a stat line or looking ahead to find a stat line. How would it dictate the outcome of the season for the national scale of things? It would be Arch Manning. If Arch Manning has a great year, puts up some gaudy numbers, look, that probably means Texas is pretty darn good considering what they have on defense. If he lives up to it, shows it on the field, and is able to perform in some of these big games, especially on the road, Texas is going to be able to win and compete in just about every game that they play in this year. And that means a lot for the national championship picture, the college football playoff, the SEC championship. It goes on. for Texas specifically, what does it look like if Texas wants to hit their ultimate ceiling? Because I think you can win a lot of football games on the back of Arch in that defense. But if you hit your ultimate ceiling, I was thinking CJ Baxter just coming back from the injury. You know, Jeff, I'm on the same lines as you. You know, what does that tell you about the offensive line and the running game that you can partner there with Arch Manning? Does Baxter come back? Because he is your most talented back. Now, will his numbers portray that? Will he have the option to get that? Will he have the touch? You know, will he have the volume? We don't know. And that's kind of where I want to go with it. Because a healthy CJ Baxter, I think, takes Texas to its ultimate ceiling with a strong run game. So national scale, it's Arch. For Texas specifically, CJ Baxter would be my answer for there.
Yep. I like the CJ Baxter one. He was on my list too. I also threw out Ryan Wingo. I figure as close as I can get to Arch. So everyone take his favorite target. And I know CJ's predicting potentially getting close to 1,000 yards or having 1,000-yard season for Wingo. And I figure if Wingo has that kind of season, I know the other guys are eating it. If he's going to be the leader and be a 1,000-yard guy, and I'm not saying that the prediction is not necessarily that for me. I'm just saying that overall, knowing his stat line and if it's good, like we're all predicting it's going to be a good stat line for him. And like CJ says, maybe in 1,000 yards, it would tell me that he's got that kind of gravity. And then your secondary guy that could be a DeAndre Moore or a Parker Livingstone also got to the 600, 700 range. And another guy got to the 400, 500 range. And I would extrapolate from there. It's kind of about it.
I think there's another interesting way you could go about it. I would pick maybe a guy like Brad Spence. What does his stat line look like? Because look, you know Colin Simmons is going to be close to, if not well exceeding, double-digit sacks. Anthony Hill, right there around double-digit sacks as well, given the opportunities to blitz the quarterback. But if you can get 5, 6, maybe 7 from a Brad Spence, well, now you're hovering around, we'll say 27 to 30 sacks of just those 3. Trey Moore in the mix. Who knows what an Ethan Burke looks like in year 4. Some of these interior guys. We talked about that 40 sack number for the 12-game regular season.
Yeah.
Look, if a Brad Spence can give you 6, 7 sacks, you're going to have a hell of a defense.
Yeah.
I think Mason Shipley's stat line could tell you a lot about how the season goes. If the accuracy is there, but the volume is low,
should be.
That probably tells you Texas is a much better red zone offense.
Yeah. No, I like that. I like that, Jeff. Because it should only be kicks in big games.
Yeah.
Hey, Ohio State comes down to it. Georgia came down to it. Maybe on the road versus Florida, whatever it is. But I'm with you. I don't need him kicking a lot because that means the red zone issues maybe still are, systemic.
Yeah. I need Mason. If I'm Sark, I need Mason Shipley to be like the baseball equivalent of like my pinch hitter or a guy that I can run out there, to spot start somebody that leads my team in batting average, but doesn't have enough at bats to qualify for like the conference batting title or the national batting title. Like I want Mason Shipley to be really accurate from 40 out. I don't need him to win the Groza Award.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I like that.
30 for 30 for 30 or 32 for 33.
It's a good take. It's a solid take. I like that. All right. Let's get to I got another question for you guys. Somebody asked me this question and I thought about it. I thought I had the answer, but I'll ask you. What loss, assuming the Longhorns don't go undefeated, which loss bothers the fans the most? Which loss hurts the program the most?
I think.
Are they the same?
If Texas loses to that miserable Cal College out east, that will bother the fans a great deal. I think the worst for the program, though, man, if Texas goes to Athens and depending on how it looks, and they lose to Georgia again, that'd be 3 in a row, 3 losses within a calendar year to Georgia. Yeah, then I think you look at that point. Then the narrative that Sark can't beat Kirby Smart. That doesn't become the narrative. That becomes just what everybody nationally assumes is the case with Texas. Like, if Sark's good, he's not better than Kirby.
Okay, so your fan and program one is different. I like that. CJ, what's your thoughts?
I think losing to Oklahoma would be a dagger for Texas fans. And I say that because I think you can bury Oklahoma as a program, if you go out there and put it on them again for 3 out of 4 years, if you beat Oklahoma by a pretty substantial margin and you go on to see what Oklahoma has to play the remainder of the year, there's a good chance they got to make another change at head coach. If they win that game in Dallas this year, that gives Brent Venables more life. It gives them more of an opportunity to kind of gel what is a brand new director of personnel with Jim Nagy and that recruiting staff with the coaching staff. It gives them more life. It gives them a reason to think, all right, this is the guy that needs to be in charge. And it also kind of puts pause into what Steve Sarkisian is doing, right? 2 years in a row where Oklahoma doesn't have a quarterback, hey, you beat the hell out of them. But those 2 years where they have a capable quarterback, now they're still beating you. And that can't be the case if you're Steve Sarkisian. So we talk about it often with Mac and not being able to get kind of the monkey off of his back in Dallas. Look, you don't want to just sit there and linger around with an Oklahoma while they're down, quote unquote, when you still have a Texas A&M who you're trying to take advantage of. You're still behind Georgia. Oh, and now Ohio State would have your number potentially 2 games in a row. You don't want Oklahoma to sit there and just start pestering you.
Yeah. No, that's good. That was a good answer. I mean, I don't know if there's not a right or a wrong answer. That's why it was a good question they posted to me.
It was a fun question.
Now, CJ, I agree with everything you said about OU 100%. But what makes that rivalry so unique is in my lifetime, I've seen opportunities where one of the teams, either Texas or OU, had a chance to basically choke the other one out and send them to an extended period of misery, and they couldn't do it.
Can't do it.
Stoops couldn't do it to Mac. And we've seen times where even the Gary Gibbs the Gary Gibbs years, where coming off the Barry Switzer run where Texas wasn't very good, they're still beating Oklahoma. So it's just, and I've seen too many times in that rivalry where the team that had no business winning that game won the game.
Yeah.
So I agree. Everything you said, CJ, is true and it's valid, and I agree with it. That's just, I'm like 99% there with you, because there's that 1% that just says, man, whenever that thing gets kicked off in the Cotton Bowl in October, dude, Rod, you played in it. Just weird, inexplicable stuff happens in that game that doesn't happen in any of the other 11 games on the schedule.
That I agree with. Yeah, there's some weird, freaky stuff that goes on in that game. My answer to it ended up being A&M for both, is what I told him. I was like, A&M for both to me. Because
also the case, Rod.
Yeah. Well, to me, only reason I said this because we all know A&M's got the resources. The one thing that Oklahoma may be lacking in this new era of college sports may just be they just don't have enough sugar daddies and resources to just stay with Texas every year, right? A&M can spend with anybody. They got money. They just don't have direction and culture right now, right? And what you don't want them to get is a good culture. You don't want them to get a good culture, a good identity again, and then start recruiting to that identity in the state of Texas with that brand. And I was like, that'll hurt the fans, number one, because you gotta live with the Aggies. At least the Sooners, they go back up north. You ain't got to deal with a lot of Sooners. Aggies, man, they everywhere in this damn state, everywhere. All y'all got family and friends that are Aggies. And so to me, I know that would hurt the fans, and I just thought it would hurt the program because, the Aggies, like I said, kind of a sleeping giant. Everybody knows that. That's why most people say they're the most underachieving program now in college. Not that Longhorns have got their ish together, that they are potentially the most underachieving athletic department in college sports because they got all the resources. They just can't win enough games or get a good, positive culture, non-toxic culture together.
The other thing too with A&M, and it's true, and any Aggie can deny it, but you can't deny it because it's the truth. I've seen Texas win a national championship in my lifetime. Now, I've seen Texas the last 2 years get to a college football playoff semifinal, be right on the cusp of playing for one. I haven't seen A&M do that in my lifetime. 1998 was their last conference championship. Texas A&M, and again, this goes back to everything you just said, Rod. They've got the resources there. A&M has every reason in the world to be a top 10 program, and they're not. In my lifetime, they are the most underachieving program in college football.
Yeah, I do think, and I kind of want to get into this mode. Maybe we'll have a weekend episode, maybe just the three of us, where we just go 1, 2, 3 down the list of SEC teams and just give out our take on what they could be, what they will be, what we think they might be. Because for A&M, look, for much as we like to dog on them, as much as the chat doesn't want to hear about them, I don't think there's a reason why they can't have a top 10 national defense every year. I think that's very much in play, very similar to that of Oklahoma. And Oklahoma, as you mentioned, Jeff, doing that with significantly less resources, but the scheme defensively is there. And I think one thing that Oklahoma's always had is that, we do this our way. We keep Oklahoma blood in Oklahoma, right? It almost to a detriment when it comes to some of their assistant coaches having played at Oklahoma, but not being the best options for that staff, right? There's been some conversations, and I think Oklahoma fans are kind of to the point now where they don't love some of the guys that are on the staff, but since they played at Oklahoma, it's hard to get rid of them, right? But I think the A&M, with the way that they've kind of positioned themselves defensively with Elko, I think they should absolutely be a top 10 defense every year. Every year.
Yeah, that's a good point. The Wrecking Crew, when I grew up, that's what the Wrecking Crew was about. The Wrecking Crew was the elite defense year in and year out, to CJ's point. And that goes back to that identity. I don't know what the identity of the program really is. I think Elko's trying to forge that for them.
Yeah. And CJ, you and Rod just made my case for me. The Wrecking Crew, I think about Sam Adams and Aaron Glenn.
Oh, man.
I was in the 3rd or 4th grade when that happened. Like, it's been a long time. I'm 41 years old now. It's been a minute. Like that, when A&M, they had a couple of years in there under R.C. Slocum where they were a one-loss team or maybe went to a bowl game undefeated, and you're like, all right, mathematically, could they end up, winning a game and then get some help and win a national championship? It was the dying days of the Southwest Conference. Nobody cared. SMU's coming off the death penalty. Texas wasn't very good. Everybody's trying to break up the Southwest Conference. Teams going to the SEC. They're going to form a league, whatever. It didn't matter, because anytime A&M played a Notre Dame or a Florida State or anybody that was nationally relevant, they get their heads kicked in because they're running an offense from 1960 at that point.
Yeah, to that's CJ's point, right? CJ's like, the easy thing for them to do is get a great defense. Yeah. Offensively, there's a lot more that they got to figure out in terms of having offensive identity and being a modernized offense. But hell, man, they got 2 Hall of Famers that they've had drafted recently. I mean, Myles Garrett and Von Miller.
Yeah,
both of them gonna be Hall of Famers. I mean, players drafted. We had Hall of Famers drafted recently like that. That's wild.
Yeah, that's just on defense. You could add Mike Evans, but to our point, look, we've had the conversation elsewhere. Is no wide receiver since then really puts a lot of fear in you in terms of what they can do at A&M. It's just the fact of the matter.
What should stick in the craw of Aggies everywhere is you had a realistic chance to make yourself, insert joke here, the flagship program in the state of Texas for a decade. When you go to the SEC, you win 11 games, you got the Heisman winner. Johnny Manziel made A&M a cool place to be. And A&M had never been more popular than they were under Johnny Manziel. And you got, you're coming off of Von Miller, and you've got Mike Evans, and you had it set up, and Texas was not very good at that point. It was on the decline under Mack Brown, and Mack was in his last days as head coach. And somehow, some way, even with that advantage, with every advantage they could ever want, they've broken free from Texas. They're in the preeminent conference in the country. They got a Heisman winner. Texas is down. They had beaten OU by 40 or whatever it was in a Cotton Bowl. They still managed to drop that ball. And I don't know how. There is a systemic issue within that athletic department that they need to figure out what it is, because until they figure it out, they're going to continue to be the butt of the joke like they've been my entire life. Like I said, since I came into this world, they are the most underachieving football program in the entire country.
Yeah, there's always something I remember talking about A&M, and it was when I was first coming up in the industry, and I was talking to somebody who was connected to a school elsewhere in the Big 12 at the time, and A&M is going on a pretty significant run recruiting wise, and yet I'm like, man, I'm kind of expressing that. You see that they're putting together a good recruiting class again. They might have something going, and the guy I was talking to just kind of stopped me. He said, CJ, one thing you'll learn is it just doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter what they end up doing because in the grand scheme of the national scale of college football, it just doesn't matter because that's just who they are. That's just what they'll do. And it took me a pretty long while to kind of come to terms with that because I'm like, oh, yeah, come on. Things change, right? You know, they got a good coach. They got some good players. Nothing changed. It's the same situation from the last 8 years. So that's one of my favorite, like, all right, you'll learn a thing or two. And that's always the A&M mantra there.
No, that's why I chose Texas, gentlemen. In a nutshell, no, I'm joking. That's why I was like, nah, I'm going to Texas. I'm going to Texas.
Hey, if honestly, if it hadn't been for RC Slocum, Rod, I don't know, you might have ended up at Florida State. Didn't you say your Colorado visit? Yeah. Good.
No, it was RC. RC is the one that made me want to stay in the state. RC was a great RC. I love me some RC Slocum. But RC was like, you know, he's the one that told me, listen, if your parents go to all your games, and that's important to you, if your parents to go to games, you got to stay in the state. He did not specify go to A&M. He said, you got to stay in the state. He said, don't go to Florida State. Don't go to Colorado. He's like, don't go to Penn State. Don't go to any of those places because then what you'll realize, people don't, is that your parents can't go to all the games. And I was like, oh, done. And nobody knew, but at that point, I decided I'm only going to Texas or Texas A&M. Because not only was, half my games going to be, at Texas or Texas A&M, but hell, another, third of them are going to be in the state somehow. Texas Tech or Baylor or somebody like that. I was like, I'm staying in the state, period. Mom and dad can go to all the games. That's simple. Because back then, before NIL, it's costly to go to all them games like that, right? So mom and pops was driving. They really it was important to them. And that was the best decision I ever made.
Even when you were getting recruited, Rod, I mean, you didn't have the national college football coverage like you do today.
No,
it was still a big deal to play a national TV game.
Yeah.
Like, Texas, Nebraska's 2:30 on ABC. Oh man, they must think this is a big time game. That's how Texas made it there in the 2:30 slot. Now it's like,
exactly.
It's
now you'll see on some channel. You'll see it exactly, right?
But you know what's funny about that though? I think Major's got an RC story like that too, because I heard Major say he was down to A&M and Texas and maybe somewhere else, and he said RC told him like, hey, gave him the hypothetical, like, hey, if you broke your leg tomorrow, got hurt, could never play again, would you want to go to school there?
Yeah.
And then at that point, Major decided, I think I'd want to be at Texas.
Yep.
So, Rod Beavers and Major Applewhite, RC Slocum was the best recruiter Texas had.
I love these. And like I said, RC, I always thought because of that, RC and Mac had some kind of secret deal. Like, hey, let's just keep a wall around the state, and then me and you duke it out for the best athletes in the state. RC was a hell of a recruiter. I'm a city boy. I'm from Houston. He couldn't, when I got to Austin and then went to Aggie Land, that was no comparison. I was like, I'm not a country boy. My mom and dad are from the country. So they love stuff like that. I'm not from the country. Now, some guys are from the country and they love the country lifestyle. That's what Aggie Land provides. And some people like that. I'm from the city. So when I went to Austin, I was like, I'm in the city. I want to go to the city. I'm gonna live and work in the city, and that's what basically did it.
To your point, Rod, one of our mentors, Bucky Godbolt, talked about recruiting Dan Campbell out of Glen Rose. And I remember Bucky told me the first time he went out to Glen Rose to visit Dan Campbell, like, there's no way in hell I'm getting this kid to come to Texas. He's going to A&M all the way.
Yeah, too much country boy in him, no doubt. All right, now whether you love the country or the city, our friends over at Flat Creek Estate Winery, they have not only great wines, but a great venue, I'm sure, that can accommodate any special occasion or event that you have. And this winery is very close to Austin, just minutes from downtown Austin, and they've won award after award this year for their vintage wine, Super Texan. Super Texan now available at your local spec, so you can give it a try. Of course, Flat Creek, also a gorgeous venue with barbecues and wine tastings every single weekend. Perfect for a date with your significant other and a weekend getaway with your significant other. Really appreciate Flat Creek Estate Winery for their ongoing support of On Texas Football. All right, we got some super chats here. Let's get to the super chats, and then we'll throw out some other topics and questions. And still 0-0, top of the third for the ladies versus Texas Tech. Sean first here. Sean says, hey guys, kind of off topic, but Governor Abbott just signed a bill allowing high school seniors here in Texas to make money off of NIL. Do you think that this will affect recruiting? It will help recruiting, I imagine, for a school like Texas. Well, what do you guys thought? Yeah, I did see that now recruits can, I guess, receive NIL compensation now. That is a new law in Texas.
I hope this helps, or I hope it retains kids in college. And I think, you look at guys that reclassify and kind of expedite their process to get into school. And look, that's great. If you're able to do that, that's great. But I think, and especially the quarterback spot, we saw it with Quinn over the last few years. Had he had that senior year, maybe things go differently in his college career, right? I think that there's kind of we need to speed everything up at the high school level. If I know I'm going to be a Division I kid, I have to get into college. I have to get that paycheck. I have to, and I think that I know that you're not going to be making as much money in high school as you would in college. But I think that going through that final year where you're the top guy in high school, you're kind of the face of a program. You're the face of a community. You're a leader. Those developmental skills, they're very important. And I hope that helps college football as a whole kind of stay on track with what they want to do. So we'll see obviously what this will change, but that's kind of my first thought is hopefully it keeps kids in their designated grades and doesn't push that timeline along too quickly is my hope.
Yeah, they might as well just call this the Quinn Ewers bill, because I don't know that it's going to move the needle for recruiting. Like, is this going to help Texas get a kid they otherwise wouldn't get? I tend to think not, but it's going to help a kid like Quinn make the decision. Like, okay, if I can get an opportunity, I don't have to uproot myself and spend a semester, basically studying abroad in Columbus, Ohio, and come back to Texas whenever.
While not playing football.
Exactly. So that it just between the injuries and that, it really makes you wonder, like, how different could things have been for Quinn as far as his development goes? Because you look at it now, it's just like there's clearly talent there, but it was so stunted between missing his senior year and then the injuries at Texas. We'll never know, but with this bill, I'd like to think it's going to prevent those situations from happening in the future. And it'll, I think, probably for Texas high school football coaches, it'll probably, CJ, you'd have a better idea of this than I do right now. I would say it's a very few guys, but the guys that would have opportunities to maybe go to a modern day or an IMG where maybe they could cash in on some NIL, it'll probably prevent that type of stuff from happening, even though we don't deal with that as much in Texas as you do in some other states.
Yeah, the other thing I'll add on top of this is what's going to be interesting is if they pass the one-time transfer rule in high school, where the UIL will kind of just turn a blind eye or kind of allow prospects to transfer one time in their high school career without having to be suspended or greenlit by opposing coaches. So that's a whole nother conversation, and it certainly gets muddy when you talk to high school coaches about what's next for the sport at that level. But I think this is a positive step because, look, there are kids right now in high school who are big recruits that have 10 to 15 to 20 to 40,000 followers on specific, platforms. I remember Evan Stewart had over 1 million on TikTok at the time that he was coming out of Frisco. So it's good. I think it's cool for the community, but ultimately keeps kids on a track where they need to be.
Yep. That's good stuff. Thank you for the super chat, Sean. I really appreciate that. Great question as well. Another super chat here from Jerry's Jack Links. Thank you for the super chat. I really appreciate that. Jerry's Jack Links. He says, what non-blue blood has had the best coaches come through? First to mind for me is Oklahoma State.
Yeah.
But what are some others? Damn, that is good, the Oklahoma State one. Right? You got Jimmy Johnson way back in the day. Isn't that Oklahoma State back in the day with Jimmy Johnson?
Jimmy's at Oak State. Yep.
Yeah. Jim Knowles there, yeah.
Yeah.
You got some guys.
That's
What's weird is
that's good.
Is it Eastern Illinois? We've talked about that recently. Kind of the guys that have come through.
Yes.
Player-wise, but will eventually become coaches,
Mike Shanahan, Sean Payton.
Yeah. That was another one in there too. What's the guy that coached the Vikings back in the day when Brett Favre was there? I want to say he was from there too.
Brad Childress?
I want to say, yeah, but I got to go look it up to make sure. Eastern Illinois is the school, though. You're right about that.
Ryan mentions it. Ryan Nelson mentioned it. Louisville was one that came to mind.
That stops probably 2013.
Howard Schnellenberger. John L. Smith had a little run there. Charlie had a couple really good years with Teddy Bridgewater. Bobby Petrino's first run there. Louisville's one that probably I was thinking about Kentucky just because they're not a blue blood, and Bear Bryant was the coach there at one point in time. Blanton Collier, Rich Brooks had a nice little run in there, had a little bit of success. Bill Curry. So Kentucky's another one that I thought of.
That is a good one. That's a good question though. That's worth some research actually. Jerry's Jack Links.
If you're going down to assistants, then combined with head coaches, I don't consider Texas Tech a blue blood. And not only do you have Mike Leach and Spike Dykes, Bill Parcells was an assistant coach at Texas Tech at one point. So
here's an interesting one. I did look this up. Iowa, notable offshoots are Bob Stoops, Brett Bielema, Mark Stoops, Dan McCarney, Barry Alvarez, and then obviously Kirk Ferentz is there now. But
it's good.
Jay Norvell is an Iowa guy.
Yeah, that's a good one right there. That's legit.
That Hayden Fry coaching tree, I don't think in the grand scheme of things, I don't think gets enough love.
He said non-blue blood though.
Yeah.
If we're considering Miami a blue blood,
yeah,
I do.
They're a new blood.
Yeah,
maybe a new blood, not a blue blood.
I mean, I can't give you non-blue blood status when you look from 83 to 01. You win 5 national championships.
Yeah.
With 4 different coaches.
Yeah.
That's got
to mean something, right? But yeah, it was Brad Childress among those. Brad Childress, like you said, and Jeff and Mike Shanahan and Sean Payton. And Tony Romo went there too, but he's not a coach.
Can I throw out one other?
Go ahead.
North Dakota State. I think that's an interesting. They only have a select few. Chris Kleiman being the most recent, who's taken over at Kansas State. But what's his name? Coach Bowl at Wyoming, who just recently retired. He was there for about 10 years. They always say weird things happen in Laramie, but that's a tough team. They gave Texas some good fights back in the day. So
that's good.
North Dakota State.
Nice.
Again, if we're talking about assistant coaches, we're gonna go with assistant coaches. The Bill Snyder coaching tree at K-State, because that's Bob Stoops, Brent Venables is on that coaching tree. James Franklin was an assistant at K-State at one point. So you start Phil Bennett is another one that I'm thinking about. So yeah, there's been a lot of really good football coaches come through that program under Bill Snyder. And again, Bill Snyder is part of the Hayden Fry coaching tree. So
nice. That's a great question though, Jerry Shackton. So
that's a fun question.
All right, good super chat there. Thank you for the super chat as well. Let's thank another sponsor before we move on, our friends over at Von Lane. We really appreciate them and their ongoing support of On Texas Football. And trust me, folks, all of us have had to get around the state of Texas to the major Texas cities, whether you're going to Austin, you're trying to get to Houston, or maybe you're trying to get to San Antonio, or you're trying to get to the DFW area. And it's a bit of a toss-up, right? Do you deal with the airport chaos and hope your flight isn't delayed, or do you brace yourself for hours behind the wheel, battling traffic and dealing with road rage and burning an entire day of productivity? Well, now there's a third option, and it's better in every way. It is Von Lane. I've taken it to DFW for business. I've taken it to Houston to go visit family. I love the Von Lane. My wife has taken it several times. She loves the Von Lane. You arrive at a luxury hotel terminal, no TSA lines, no long-term parking lots, just a seamless boarding experience that takes minutes, not hours. You settle into a plush leather seat, a hot towel, pillow, and blanket are at arm's reach. Your attendant offers complimentary snacks, beverages, and on select trips, a full meal if you'd like. And if you need to relax, well, you can lean back and enjoy the ride. If you want to stay productive, there's high-speed Wi-Fi and power at every seat. And while you're unplugging or powering through, the Von Lane team is monitoring traffic in real time, using smarter routes and efficient detours to keep your trip smooth and on schedule. And now is the perfect time to plan your fall travel. Booking is open through September, so whether you're headed to a college football game like a lot of you right now are, or your weekend getaway or a business trip that needs to be done right, Von Lane makes the journey part of the reward. Von Lane serves Austin, Dallas, Houston, Fort Worth, San Antonio, and in the Southeast, Atlanta, Nashville, and Memphis as well. Visit vonlane.com. That's VONLANE.com, and use the code OTF25 to save $20 off your first ride with Vaughn Lane. That's Vaughn Lane Elevated Regional Bus Transportation. Thank you very much to our friends over at Vaughn Lane for sponsoring our Wednesday live stream. All right, a couple of things I want to bring up with you guys. I know we got some questions. We'll get back to the questions, but I want to hit a couple of topics. First topic I would like to get into is there was an article done at Athlon Sports about Arch Manning. I believe Brian Davis wrote this article. So shout out to Brian Davis. And it was an interesting piece. He's talking about basically Arch Mania. But one of the pieces, one of the excerpts from the piece really stood out to me. And I want to know if you guys believe this, and if you do believe it, is it something that should change for Sark? It says here, based in the article, it says that Sark he's adamant that he hasn't spoken with the Mannings at all, Peyton and Eli, about their nephew. He said Arch apparently doesn't lean on his family members for too much football advice either. He said, quote, "I think once I got to college, I'm just working with the coaches," Manning says. "If I go home, I'll throw with my dad, Cooper." And he said, he goes on to talk about him and Ewers and that kind of stuff. All right. Do we think that that's true that they have, that Sark hadn't even talked to the Mannings at all? I don't want to talk to him.
CJ, I'll just say this on the record. Every time Sark has mentioned it on the record, he says he talked to Archie maybe like a little bit, but not Peyton, not Eli. Okay. And I mean, when I talked to AJ Milwee at the Sugar Bowl, he said everything was done through Arch's parents.
Okay.
So I mean, anytime they've been on the record, they've maintained that. So that's their story, and they're sticking to it. And I've got no reason to not believe them.
Yeah, I agree. And what's going to be interesting is how often we see the Mannings at the facility, because they've popped up here and there to Moncrief, right? They'll kind of poke their head in, but I don't think it's for anything more than what maybe just a media availability, or if they're doing something from their own production studio. So I don't think it's sitting down with Milwee and start grinding tape. That's probably not it. And I don't think Arch, it's kind of one of those things where you don't want to keep asking and asking and asking for advice. I get it. It's a little tedious.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's kept that same kind of they're there if I need them, but I probably don't.
Yep. No, and Eli has said Arch is going to be his individual journey. He wants him to have that journey, that growing experience, and all that kind of stuff. So I can tell they're not trying to be too intrusive with things, but man, hell of a resource. Hope at one point I would hope that Sark could reach out if he needs to. Hey, man.
I think it was last summer that Peyton came down to work with Arch. They were just going to throw, and I think it was the Marty Smith interview where Arch was talking about this, and he kind of got into Peyton's preparation because the texts start firing. He's like, "Hey, what time you get in the building? Do you have the keys? Where am I parking? Where are we warming up? How long are we going to warm up?" Like basically, like trying to go like minute by minute throughout the day. Like, well, that's why Belichick and Gruden and all these guys respect Peyton Manning so much for his preparation, his dedication. Because it's saying a lot what I'm about to say, Rob, but I don't know that any quarterback in the history of the game prepared more than Peyton Manning to try to perfect his craft.
Yeah.
No, in terms of the mental side of it, the football IQ. He is. I don't know if there's anybody comparable to his acumen of the game. That was his X-Man ability. He had great arm too, but his X-Man ability was that he could think the game through and he could process it faster than his opponents and literally do it at the line of scrimmage in real time. All right, let's okay. So yeah, I thought that was interesting. I thought that was an interesting little nugget from that piece. Go check out Athlon Sports. Actually, it was pretty good. Just talks about Arch Mania and how it's blowing up. And honestly, it is. I think it is fair to say that, and it seems hyperbolic, that this is the most pressure that any players ever had on them in the history of college football and maybe college sports. I mean, I'm trying to think of what college athletes had this much pressure on them to be a success going into their first year as a full-time starter or, showcase athlete. I mean, I remember Fab Five had a lot of pressure. Remember Fab Five had a lot of pressure. Remember that?
Not right out of the gate, though.
Not right out of the gate. But once it started to build and the storyline started to grow, there was a lot of pressure on them. But then they had it as a group, you could kind of shoulder it. Because it was the Fab Five. It was us, not just one individual person. And I'm trying to think of one individual. Kaylin Clark. I mean, I'm trying to think of one individual person. But it wasn't her first time like out of the gate as a player. She had been building to that, that crescendo, to that, zenith. He's a Manning and he came out over. I can't think of an example that
Zion Williamson.
That's not a bad one. That's not a bad one. So what kind of pressure did Sims? Sims had a lot of pressure. Sims had a lot of pressure on him.
Trevor Lawrence comes to mind. Because like that, those Clemson teams were pretty good when he took over. And he did come in with that battle with him and Justin Fields out of high school. Who's the number one player? One was a 1.00, the other was a 0.99. Justin Fields obviously had to sit a year at Georgia and then transferred up to Ohio State. But Trevor Lawrence, I thought, had a lot of expectations when Clemson was really rolling.
That's a good one, CJ.
Yeah,
I remember that too.
But Clemson doesn't click like Texas. That's the big difference. Is the hype, the expectation, the views, the questions, whatever. It's not going to be anything close to what Arch is seeing.
If we were in the social media age when Ron Powlus was going into his freshman year at Notre Dame, Cook came out and said, "Yeah, Ron Powlus is going to win 2 Heisman trophies." If we were in the social media age, that's a program that, in terms of national attention and scrutiny and the microscope, Notre Dame is that big. But that's the early to mid 90s. So you can't even compare it. The only thing
that's good. Okay, see, Hogan from that's a good one. Because of the Michigan scandal, Ryan, there was a lot of pressure on Ryan Day to win.
And not a quarterback, which makes it different. But man, Adrian Peterson going into his freshman year at Oklahoma is like, all right, this guy's going to be really. It's not a matter of is he going to succeed, is how good is he going to be, and like from the jump. But again, he's not a quarterback, so it's different.
Yeah. I can't think of one, but there were some good ones. But oh man, it's a lot of hype, and we haven't even really gotten deep into the hype season, and we've still kind of gotten a ton of the man. There's a Manning article every week from some national publication, guys. I got like 2 of them we can talk about just now, whether it be a ranking or a mock draft or a breakdown and eval. I mean, it's just all over we have not seen that kind of hype about a Texas quarterback, not in the internet age. Sorry, not even for VY, and it wasn't like this.
No, because he had the Chris Sims buffer. You knew he wasn't going to play early.
Yeah, someone said, I seen CB say LeBron type hype. I remember the LeBron hype. It was crazy. I don't know if it's there, but it's right beneath it. It's in that conversation. That's LeBron. That was wild.
That's the only thing I could compare it to. Is LeBron's rookie year in the NBA, where I mean, it's
in the vault.
Yeah, as much as people want you to succeed, there's a decent percentage of the population that's just waiting on you to fall flat on your face.
Well, he was on Eric Kids 27's point. LeBron was on ESPN as a high school junior. I remember that. I remember watching the high school kid on ESPN. Like, what is this? Like,
he was a sophomore on the cover of Sports Illustrated.
That's crazy.
And they literally were like, he's gonna be as good, if not better, than Michael Jordan. I think everybody was like, that's impossible. What are y'all talking about? That's stupid. Why would y'all even say something so egregiously dumb? And then it's like we're having that conversation 20 years later, having that debate, and it is a bit, it's wild. Like that.
It's got to feel pretty cool if you're the first person to kind of peg LeBron as the next MJ, and you can just kind of go back. I'm sure y'all seen the tweet, the Paige Becker's tweet when she was in 6th grade and someone was at a camp.
I saw that. Yeah,
like, y'all need to. Yeah, Sue Bird level talent, 6th grader Paige Beckers. Keep an eye on her. It's like, Yo, how'd you know that?
How'd you get it? You got it right. Hey, yeah, and now you got receipts. See, back in the day, you didn't have receipts and that kind of stuff, CJ. You could just anybody could say they said it.
Mm-hmm.
Now you got receipts, man. That's good for social media right there.
Yeah.
Or bad.
That's what separates Arch from any other Texas athlete we've seen to this point. Like with Chris Sims, there was no social media at that point. Mm-hmm. So he could kind of be insulated from it a little bit. There were big expectations for Kevin Durant, but Texas basketball isn't in the same stratosphere as Texas football as far as media attention and scrutiny and expectations. So I don't know that there's been an incoming athlete at Texas that has dealt with it to the extent that Arch is.
Yeah, I agree with that. Speaking of quarterbacks, let's get to these. Josh Pate had his quarterback rankings, SEC preseason QB rankings. I thought they were interesting because he's number one quarterback and he's showing Arch some love. His number one QB on his preseason rankings was DJ Lagway. He's got DJ Lagway number one. He's got Arch number two. And then Lenora Sellers, he's got number three on his list. So a lot of people are high on Garrett Nussmeier. I think he's got some of the highest odds to win the Heisman this year. A lot of people are high on him. He's got Nussmeier fourth on his list. He's got John Mateer fifth on this list. I think he's got Diego Pavia way too low, but Diego Pavia is just a baller, not necessarily a quarterback, so I can see that. He's definitely going with upside here. This is all about upside because DJ Lagway is an upside guy. So, I mean, Arch, we already know he's going to be tremendous, but it's all about the upside because they haven't accomplished a ton just yet. Lenora Sellers, he's accomplished more. I mean, he looked fantastic toward the end of the year, but feels like it's an upside list. But if it hits, I mean, you'll look like a genius because all these guys, if they reach their potential, at least Lagway, Arch Manning, even some people with Sellers are saying these guys have first-round potential if they can hit their ceiling as players.
Yeah, look, anybody that drags Vanderbilt to 6 wins and bowl eligibility, I'll give them the nod over quite a few other guys in that conference. Exactly. Just saying. Before we got on live, I started working on my own top 10 because look, it's about that time, man. It's fun. I love these conversations. It makes for great banter. My 1-2 is the exact same, different order. I think when it comes to overall ceiling, Arch Manning for me, what we saw last year was just that, what we've heard behind closed doors. Look, he checks every single box, the preparation, the understanding of an offense, understanding of a defense, knowing and just flat out execution plus the legs. You're getting a Manning with the ability to run, sign me up. But I love DJ Lagway's big playability. I'm a big fan of his. The one thing I might be a little bit lower on than many is Lenore Sellers, and not by much. But I want to see if he's able to kind of create that magic again at times. Because you look at his best plays, his highlight tape from a year ago, it beats just about everybody, right? I think he is lightning in a bottle. But a lot of that comes from broken plays, just kind of being able to out-athlete a lot of folks. Does he take that next step and just take the easy play when it's available? Because that was an issue last year, is reading that first read, getting the ball out on time. And as a result, because he's so athletic, because he's so creative, he was able to make up for not being on time, right? The 1-2 drop back and deliver the rock. If defense is kind of, making an adjustment there, we'll see if he's able to replicate that. But I might be just a little bit hesitant to say he's in that conversation once again.
Yeah, I think as I look at it, again, I'll ask the question, what's your criteria for a ranking? Is it going into the year? Is it where you think they're going to be at the end of the year? Is it what does the ceiling look like? Because to CJ's point, if we're going based on what does the ceiling look like, I think you've got the top two right, and I would flip them because if Arch Manning hits his ceiling, you're talking about a guy who, whenever he decides to go pro, is going to be the number one pick in the draft. Like, I don't think you can get a ceiling much higher than that. So that's where the number one spot. To me, I think those top four, and if you want to put Mateer in there, that's fine. I think there's a pretty wide gap between the top five and the rest of the field. I love Diego Pavia as a baller, but Diego Pavia's absolute best isn't going to suddenly make Vanderbilt an 11-win team.
He's a better gamer than quarterback.
Yeah.
And as a result, I think you hit a ceiling to what we're saying, Jeff.
Yeah. And the three that intrigue me are Jackson Arnold, just because that guy that we saw coming out of high school, is that guy still in there somewhere? And can Hugh Freeze and that staff get that out of him? And Taylon Green and Marcel Reed, to me, it's as simple as, can they evolve to where the boom is more prevalent than the bust? Because those two guys for me were way too up and down. Yeah. Like, good Taylon Green was great. Bad Taylon Green lost you ball games. And the same thing with Marcel Reed.
Yeah, I do think Austin Simmons at 6, it might feel high, but you look at what that offense has offensively. You look at how Kiffin's able to scheme things open for his offense and his quarterback. Look, Matt Corral put up gaudy numbers at Ole Miss.
Yeah.
He was drafted by the Panthers day 3, and they said, yo, we can't do anything with it. You don't know how to play defense. So, I think Matt Corral was cut within 4 months of being drafted as a day 2 pick. So it's going to be interesting. But I think Austin Simmons, it feels high. He's going to be putting up some big numbers. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, it's good. And the John Mateer thing is really interesting. I mean, I'll give you a John Mateer stat. He's got some freaky ones. The improvement in EPA per dropback, expected points added per dropback. He was last year, Jackson Arnold was at 128th, and John Mateer is 6th. There's going to be a huge improvement in overall quarterback play and efficiency for them. But what does it mean? Like, does it translate to wins? Period. That's what we don't know for Oklahoma. I think a lot of that will be based on the supporting cast. But all the transfer portal rankings of players all have Mateer as either the top quarterback or the top player acquired in the transfer portal. Like, he's that kind of impact player. So just throwing it out there for the folks. All right. And real quick, Matt, if you don't mind, since talking about SEC, I believe Pro Football Focus, they had their highest rated SEC returning quarterbacks hold it up, and they're a little bit higher on Diego Pavia based on their Pro Football Focus ratings for returning QBs. As you see there, highest graded SEC quarterback returning is Diego Pavia.
Gamer.
He is a gamer, dude. He's a likes. And did you hear him talking trash back to Ryan Williams?
I love it, man. You can't talk about a 3-time state wrestling champion and expect him to just not say anything back. That's who he is, man. I don't know. I'd never want to see quarterbacks fight each other, but he's the one where I'm like, I kind of want to see it with him. He's got that chip, man. I love it.
He's a likes to fight guy quarterback, and that's rare. Yeah. Usually quarterbacks are not likes to fight guys.
He's a bar brawler.
Yeah, exactly. Usually when we used to get in fights sometime downtown, just full disclosure, we get into fights and everybody would just protect the quarterback, like, get to the back while we handle this. He would be one of the quarterbacks that would get to the front, like, nah, hold up. He'd be out there with the D lineman. D lineman are always the first to fight, just a heads up. D lineman love to, I don't know why people want to fight D lineman, but we'd end up in bar fights and they want to fight Casey Hampton. Like, what are you doing?
No, I'll go home.
Rob, what was a bar that Casey and Aaron Humphrey, I think, and JJ Kelly hung out at one of the bars downtown?
Oh,
yeah. They weren't hired bouncers. They just like hung out there.
Yeah, was it Side Street or something? I believe it was called. Yeah, they literally would. First thing you see when you walk in was basically the entire D line, and dude, it was Big Sean and Casey, and like I said, somehow these guys would end up. I don't know how people would end up in these I don't know. They'd end up in altercations with these. I'm like, I don't care what happens if they bump into you or you drink tangerine. I don't know if it was tangerines. It was not the Yellow Rose. Even though,
come on, Brian.
We call it the flower shop, by the way, Brian. It's the flower shop. But anyway, we're way off topic. I apologize. All right, let's get back on.
We're off topic, right? Because Casey Hampton's on that ballot for the College Football Hall of Fame. So,
that is true.
We are on topic
for 2026. Casey Hampton for that class, right? For 2026. You know what? Let's thank our friends at Advanced Pain Care really quickly, and then we'll come back to that conversation. Yeah, A-Hump too. Bad deal. I don't know what these people thinking. All right, let's thank our friends over at Advanced Pain Care with a very special message. Speaking of legendary lifetime Longhorns, Colt McCoy and Vince Young.
Pros know the pain stops here.
Physical therapy helps me as an athlete then and now. And do I still need therapy? Yes. And Advanced Pain Care helps with that.
Injuries will stack up. They'll add up. You can't let those injuries get you down, and advanced pain care has been very helpful for me.
We can help with whatever's got you down, from nerve damage to our spinal cord stimulator. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. Same-day appointments available.
Advanced pain care. The pain stops here.
All right. Thank you very much to our friends over at Advanced Pain Care. And yes, congrats to my former teammate, legendary lifetime Longhorn Casey Hampton. He is on the 2026 College Hall of Fame ballot, College Football Hall of Fame ballot, and he should be a no-brainer. In my opinion, I've never, just going off what he did at Texas, because that's what they consider him, just his college time. But even with the Pittsburgh Steelers, he's one of the all-time greatest Pittsburgh Steelers. That should say a lot about his football character and achievements. But he actually led the team in tackles, guys, from the D tackle position.
2 years in a row.
Twice. 2 years in a row.
Look,
insane.
You realize, like, if somebody has like 15 tackles for loss in a season, like, you're like, wow, they had a really good year. Casey Hampton had 39 his last 2 years at Texas.
It's silly, dude. I'm telling you.
It's stupid. Like, it's and bowl games did not count towards your stat totals at that point. So Casey even got shafted by a couple games. Like, I've never just the presence that he had on the field was like, you couldn't. And he had Rod. I don't know. I've never had the pleasure of speaking to Casey, so I've never had to ask him about it. But Casey had this weird like stance he would do sometimes where he would like angle himself to the ball. And like just this weird stance he would get, like you couldn't physically replicate. It's like I physically don't know how he did it, but he would do it and like swim move somebody in next thing, like he's in a quarterback's lap. So at his size, and like you said, I think he needs some more. He's going to need somebody to stump for him for the Pro Football Hall of Fame, because it's get to the table as a finalist, because his numbers aren't going to get him there. But when you look at when the Pittsburgh Steelers did an all-time team a few years ago, and the defensive line is the steel curtain, and you have a career.
Very good.
Still, seriously, that's wild. Actually, that might be what they need to argue at when they sit down at the table to plead his case. Say, listen, man, I know it don't count because it's in the NFL, but let me tell you about this, man. All-time team for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
I've got plenty of friends who are Steelers fans, and they'll tell me, like, look, his numbers, he's never going to have the numbers to be a Hall of Fame guy. They're like, you go ask Dick LeBeau or Bill Cowher or Mike Tomlin. You go ask them, and they'll tell you Casey Hampton was every bit as important as Roethlisberger or any of the Hall of Fame guys off those Steelers teams that helped them win Super Bowls. Casey Hampton was as important as any of them. But going back to the college game, even as good as like Tavondre Sweat was, Malcolm Brown had one of those years. I've just never seen somebody take over a game, and really until I saw Ndamukong
Suh,
I never saw a nose tackle, an over the ball defensive tackle dominate a football game the way Casey Hampton could.
Yeah, no, it's good stuff. Speaking of defensive linemen, I know we're getting close to the end of the live stream, but Pro Football Focus did a ranking of the best D lines in college football, top 10 best defensive lines in college football. The Longhorns did make the list, not as high as I thought they'd be on this list, but they have the Longhorns at the 10th spot, the 10th best defensive line on this list. Some of the Longhorns opponents that'll be on this list, the Sooners are 9th. So I think the Sooners got a better D line than Texas. We can talk about that. Georgia, of course, probably been on this thing for the last 8-9 years now. Georgia's number 7 on this list, another Texas opponent, and they have Florida Gators. Longhorns got to go to the swamp. They got them Florida Gators with the number 4 ranked defensive line on this list. And man, shout out Clemson, by the way, the team that Texas played in the college football playoff and ended up beating them so bad they had to fire the defensive coordinator. They are ranked number 1 on this list. And shout out to the Texas Tech Raiders. Found their way to number 3 on this list. Man, that West Texas all money. It is it's powerful. Texas T. All right, gentlemen, what are your thoughts? Texas defensive line ranked too low, 10th. I think they're a little too low. I think by the end of the season they'll be they should be creeping toward being like a top 5 defensive line when it's all said and done, in my opinion. But that's all about the D tackles, which still, I'll admit, that is a lot of that is a question mark about that group.
It's just an unknown.
Yeah.
You don't quite know. The addition of Murad Watson, talking with Jerry earlier this morning, look, Texas, I think, is really going to enjoy having Murad Watson over the middle. I think Cole Brevard's a draft pick. I think that you get some really quality snaps and run from a Levon Johnson, Alex January, certainly. And Texas is going to have the bodies. Will they have the top end guys like some of the teams atop the list? I think it remains to be seen, but we know the edges are going to be superb. And all in all, it doesn't matter a whole lot when you're able to throw in a blitz from Anthony Hill, a blitz from Trey Moore, a blitz from Brad Spence, right? That's going to help. But I'd say Texas maybe a little too low. I think Oklahoma is a little too low. I like that front 7 a lot. They've got some dudes. So we'll see. Aiden Jackson, Dominic Williams. Yeah.
Well, we talked about that on the live stream last night, right?
Yeah. Jerry said he liked him too. Yeah.
You and I talked about, I like OU's defensive front. You think Brent Venables is going to have a good defense, and we're the question last night on the live stream was, hey, Oklahoma and Auburn, like which one do you trust more? And I'm like, the only thing I really trust about either one of those teams is I feel like Brent Venables is going to field a competent defense. Other than that, I have I couldn't tell you anything about Oklahoma with any level of certainty. Yeah, Oklahoma's really good up front, but man, Colin Simmons is a trump card. When you got that guy, you should be higher than 10.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I think that the edges are so deep that that'll come to fruition and materialize during the season. But I get the 10th spot just because of the question marks in the interior. I get it. Question marks, not necessarily a liability or weakness for Texas. All right. Still right now 0-0.
First to one. Three games in a row, perhaps.
It's a defensive struggle here. All right, we're approaching the end, so let's thank our final sponsor of tonight's program. We appreciate our friends over at South Point Dodge for being a sponsor of our Wednesday live stream. You can check them out at southpointdodge.com. Over 600 vehicles, folks, in stock right now. 600, including the all-new 2025 Jeep Wrangler. You can get the real deal today and drive away in the Jeep Wrangler, a vehicle built for adventure. Plus, you can get employee incentive pricing right now at South Point Dodge. That means you pay what the employees pay. That's right. You get the employee discount right now at South Point Dodge. So score big today at South Point Dodge. Go see them off of I-35 in South Austin, or you can go online at southpointdodge.com. Whether you need a car or a truck, something new, something used, trade-in, whatever it is, South Point Dodge is Austin's automotive everything. So get to the point today at South Point Dodge. And don't forget the employee incentive pricing. That's their very fancy way of saying you get the employee discount at South Point Dodge. Thank you very much to South Point Dodge, southpointdodge.com for sponsoring our Wednesday live stream. All right, we're going to fly through a few questions here as we get to the end of our live stream. Morgan says, can you preview Texas SEC opponents this season, namely their overall prospects for the upcoming season? We actually are doing previews actually week to week. So actually not we did the non-conference. We're starting with the non-conference. Did Ohio State last week. So we'll do that week to week, Morgan. So please be patient with us. We'll get to the SEC play and then we'll break it all down like in depth. Give you some good stuff. Jeff will be on some of those. CJ will be on some of those as well. So thanks, Morgan. Alan says, I'm looking for Dwayne Akina and how many times the camera catches him running up and down the sideline with his arms above his head. Yep, Coach Akina gonna be wilding out there a lot. And do they got? I gotta ask Coach Akina, do they have him coaching like special teams units too? Because when I was there, he was big into special teams.
I would hope so, man.
He was quite the asset there. Andrew says, any baseball portal news today?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes, actually a pretty notable commitment. Just before we got on air, Josh Livingston out of Wichita State projected to play first base and third base for the Longhorns next year, according to our Blake Monroe. Hit 284 last year, 15 home runs, 10 doubles. He had a 48 RBIs, pretty solid OPS as well, right around 960. So pretty solid bat adding to the lineup. You see it here. Thank you, Matthew, for pulling it up. But yeah, Brian, you got it absolutely right. A total shocker out of the portal right now. He was on campus today and, of course, ends up committing to the Longhorns. But Texas is going to be aggressive. You get one guy on campus, you get one commitment on the same day. Texas is going to be aggressive in this portal cycle, and I think there are plenty of arms that they're targeting right now, specifically from the left side that I'll throw out there that I think folks are going to like.
Yeah, this is why I said last night on the live stream, Rob, when it came up, that probably within the next 24 to 36 hours, you're going to hear about some guys getting on campus and some stuff start happening. Yeah, we expected this, and it's I would say grab you a Red Bull and strap in because Schloss is at a breakneck pace in the portal right now.
Ooh, I like it. I like to hear it. All right, thank you for that, guys. Nice update. Also, how about Jay? He says, any updates on Jonah? He seems to be fighting an injury of some sort toward the end of baseball season.
He played most of the probably the last month of the season, maybe more with a hamstring injury. They were really trying to manage it. They would pull him early in some games. They had to have him out there because it ended up being he became a reliable bat, and we see the outfield arm, his ability to contribute on assists and help with the double play. I think that was in the first UTSA game. I don't know. They're all running together at some point from the regional. Yeah, it was a hamstring, and the only thing you can do for a hamstring is rest it. So that's what they're going to do.
All right. Thank you for that. Ryan says, Rod B, as a football investigator, have you concluded that the red zone issues were mainly a Quinn issue and his unwillingness to throw into tight windows? My best theory, which some of it was confirmed by Sark himself, was that a lot of it has been a Bijan Rojo hangover. He actually brought that up in one of his media availabilities, that it's just hard calling red zone plays after Bijan and Rojo. You just spoiled. I call any damn thing in the red zone, and Bijan and put some Bijan on it with a side of Rojo, and boom, it was money. And I do think for Quinn, who has struggled, in terms of pure progression reads, that has been a struggle for him. But he started out really good in the red zone this past season, and then that kind of deteriorated. I think Arch will be better in the red zone because he's mobile. So even if you don't run him in the red zone, you have to respect the mobility. And he is better. I actually did a Sunday school about this, mostly in third and long situations, but I think it will translate to straight drop back in red zone. He's just better in straight drop back situations, period. So you do have that. You didn't even really have that as something that you could rely on with Quinn because that wasn't a strength for him. I think it's a strength for Arch, is in straight drop back situations. Go back and go look at my Sunday school from a couple of weeks ago, and I go into his third and longs, 3rd and 7+ yards to gain, which is basically when you strip the offense down. No RPOs really, no play action pass really, no screens in that situation. We're just trying to get the first down, and we're straight drop back, butt naked drop backs, and he's really good in butt naked situations. I know. I probably shouldn't have stayed like that, but you get my point. All right. I mean, you strip the passing game down to its most, the basic form, this straight drop back. And he's really good in those situations, better than I thought he would be.
Yeah. I feel like Sark just needs to hone in on what's going to work. And, having an identity on offense, I think will help, because the identity was Roshan and Bijan. I don't know what the true identity of the offense was the last 2 years. I think that's contributed. I think you started to find one in 23, and then Jonathan Brooks got hurt. So, and I hear what I see in the chat, and there's some good points that, hey, you got to be able to move people. I agree with that. I'm not saying I'm not saying it's not important. You got to be able to move people, but I think Sark is too good of a play caller, and I think you've got too many dynamic options on offense for you to just want to get in the red zone and just play like old school meathead football. Like I don't. You're hamstringing yourself if you're going to just play it in the phone booth. So yeah, the offensive line's got to be better, no question. But this is you've been so bad in that area, everybody has to pick it up.
Yep, multifactorial. It's not just one issue. I think that's why Sark couldn't solve it.
Yeah,
it would be different if it was just one issue. If it was just it's just push. Well, it's not always just push. Sometimes it's play calling. Sark has admitted that, by the way. The sequencing of the plays sometimes is off by him. Sometimes it's the play calling. Even in Ohio State games, question the play calling. Sometimes it is the play calling. Sometimes the type of running backs you have. Bijan and Rojo had what I call a violent twitch that you need in red zone situations by running backs. It helped you. Yes, your offensive line, they don't move other human beings around. They're not great in power situations. They're more of a finesse offensive line, even though they have big humans. And so it's it's always something different with the red zone. I think that's why it's been hard for Sark to figure it out. I think he will figure it out. I think, honestly, Arch's skill set will solve it for him. I don't know if he'll figure it out as much as Arch will fix it for him, because Arch's skill set is so much more, I think, so much more dynamic, and he'll offer him solutions in the red zone. All right. Good stuff, guys. Appreciate all of the questions, the super chats, great participation. I think we're all a little distracted, so now we can focus fully on the ladies and trying to give them good mojo so they can go win this natty. So go
Let
ahead.
me say this real quick, Rod. I don't know for folks watching at home. I kind of went silent because I was trying to understand what was happening. Reese Atwood just threw out a runner from Tech by about, 10 feet, maybe 14 feet. And now they get a run out of it. That's one of the worst. I don't understand obstruction, to be completely honest. But that's what was called on what was one of the more clear caught stealings I've seen this season. Instead, Texas Tech given second life.
Damn.
Wow.
Instead of 2 outs, bases empty, then you had it gets overturned. Now you got a runner in scoring position with 1 out. Man, obstruction in softball and baseball, it's just like targeting in football. I can't. Nobody, even the people trying to regulate it in the field and legislate, they can't tell you what the hell it is.
Throw the hat, Cotton says. Throw the hat. If we get CJ throwing a hat before we get out of here and show how upset he is about this. There we go. Thank you, Matthew.
Very appropriate.
That's why Matthew's the best in the business. Thank you, Matthew, for all your hard work, man. No, you're the real MVP, that's for sure. Thank you to our sponsors. Thank you to Von Lane, vonlane.com. Use that code OTF25 for $20 off your first ride with Von Lane. Thank you to Advanced Pain Care. Thank you to Flat Creek Estate Winery, flatcreekestate.com. And thank you to South Point Dodge, southpointdodge.com. CJ, I appreciate all of your expertise and knowledge. Jeff, great stuff as always, man. Always enjoy our conversations. And thank you guys out there for your participation and your questions. If we didn't get to your questions or your comment, we apologize about that. Please direct them to the gentleman at Coffee and Football tomorrow morning, bright and early, 8:15 a.m. Bobby Bird and Jerry Hamilton. And on Thursday, we'll be back, CJ and myself and Coach Shipley will be back with the Winning Drive at 3:15 tomorrow as well. So for Jeff and for Matthew and for CJ, I'm Lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers. Until next time, hook 'em.
Welcome.
Welcome.